Well, let's go to Ukraine and the latest from Vladimir Putin. Overnight, the Nord Stream gas pipeline, which connects Europe with Russian gas, was damaged in an apparent sabotage attempt from Russia. It comes only after a week when Putin threatened nuclear weapons and, of course, the escalation of his war with the conscription of nearly 1 million new troops. This has all been going on since February, as you know. Ukraine, unbelievably, is continuing its strong defence. Cracks are beginning to show in Russia. Protests are coming through into Western media as ordinary Russians are realising they're not only losing the war, but tens of thousands of young Russian men are dying in vain. And joining me now, my Wednesday night international panel, former Labor MP Michael Danby and Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. Michael, I'll start with you first. We know in the last sort of 48 hours we've got these sham plebiscites that Putin's putting up, genuine coercion to get the result he wants in these formerly annexed, occupied territories in Ukraine. What happens next?
Well, it's all coordinated by Putin to influence the Europeans so that during the winter, by cutting off the gas, conveniently for him, now Nord Stream's not even going to provide 20%, it's going to provide zero. By having these referendums where he implies that by attacking the provinces he's claimed there'll be tactical nuclear weapons used if he doesn't. It's all designed to scare the Europeans. It's a race, Peter, between Putin putting pressure on the Europeans and the Ukrainians winning in the battlefield with their incredible courage and their new Western weapons. So let's see what happens. I believe the cracks in Russia are the thing that he didn't think of.
Yes.
And the lines you've seen at the borders in Finland and Georgia, unbelievable.
The US President, Joe Biden, says there'll be catastrophic responses from the US if he goes down the path of nuclear weapons. What does that practically mean, Kosha?
That's such a great question, Peta. And I think, this Nord Stream, the breaks or the explosions sort of might be suggestive of possibly what that means, because these things always, when left vague, leave it to the imagination. And when we're talking about potentially conflict with a nuclear power, that's very scary to many people. So who knows what exactly that means? The problem, something that's a little bit troubling, is there have been some video that have gone viral in the last 24 hours in the wake of this Nord Stream issue, with him saying that if Russia were to invade Ukraine, we will make sure the Nord Stream pipeline does not exist. Victoria Nuland is on camera having said that. And who knows? I know investigations are underway. Many governments are coming out and saying there's sabotage. And as the finger might be being pointed to that being an example of what Biden meant, it doesn't lend a lot of confidence to those who sort of subscribe to a realist point of view around the foreign policy and seeing what we could do to prevent escalation rather than fettering that and continuing escalation.
Mahsa Amini, Michael, Iran, 22-year-old girl murdered, wasn't wearing the hijab the way they wanted her to wear. I'm not going to say wasn't wearing it properly. I think it's improper to force women to wear it in any event. But there's protests, there's riots, there's demonstrations in the streets. Is something more significant than what we're seeing now going to come of this?
Sadly, I don't think so. There was the Green Revolution in 2019 and there was further uprisings in 2019. There's no sign that the Ayatollah regime isn't willing to crush and kill dozens, if not hundreds of people in order to keep themselves in power. And, President Biden needs to speak up louder like President Obama should have. And we should support the women of Iran.
Spot on. Let's go to the UK, Kosha. New PM, new king, new budget, all done in under a fortnight, I tell you what. And as far as Conservative budgets go, Liz Truss and the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, they haven't missed. They've got rid of the top tax ban, so 45 pence in the pound gone, completely gone. The basic tax rate's now 19%. They've dropped a planned hike in the health levy. They've put a whole lot of measures out there to address cost of living, particularly, as we know, in energy. Go big or go home has been the talk around the Tory ranks that I've been watching closely. Market reaction, the pound versus US dollar, pretty mixed, pretty unsteady still. But I at least admire her guts. What about you?
For sure, big desperate times or big times call for big measures, and she's certainly stepping into those shoes. I think she's sort of channeling her inner Thatcher with doing this and the trickle-down economics. The only thing that's a little bit different, Peta, about kind of the backdrop against which she's doing this today versus where Thatcher was in the 90s is the situation with the sovereign balance sheet and just the amount of debt that they now have and the cost of financing that debt, both, especially as interest rates rise. Will that wipe out any economic gains that would come from the sort of trickle-down economics, Reaganomics, Thatcheronomics that will come from that? That remains to be seen. And I think it's making some people nervous, which is why you saw the rare move from the IMF trying to venture into that. But I do admire that she's trying to shake things up and bring big change because they definitely need it.
And what about the Belt and Road, Michael? The $1 trillion debt trap, we've talked about it here, influence via infrastructure. The Chinese are now rethinking the scheme. They're pulling back pretty hard. Is that because people have woken up this isn't free money, or has China got debt servicing problems of their own?
Well, I think some of the lenders have worked that out. The Chinese have lent out $1 trillion. It's a very expensive way of extending one's influence around the world. And they've got lots of defaulters like the Sri Lankans who can't or won't pay the debt. And I've got a tip for you and for the Chinese ambassador. I think that's the strategy in the Solomons. I don't think they're going to take lots of Chinese dough and not pay it back. And I recommend the ambassador Google the word cargo cult.
We'll watch that closely, you're right, because they're refusing to sign an agreement with the US and other Pacific nations at the latest in the last few hours. Got to leave it there. Kosher Garner, Michael Danby, thank you.